The real magic of breakthrough thinking happens when you challenge the status quo, push your thinking, and check the edge of your own capabilities and potential.
Well, accident happened, everybody was focused on everything I suddenly didn't have and that all my dreams were shattered. Everybody's now looking at me, and this creates an opportunity for me to be great. Turn this bad thing into something great.
That was Pieter Du Preez, Paralympic gold medalist, 7-time winner of the Berlin Marathon, and the first athlete with C6 quadriplegia to complete an Ironman triathlon. I'm proud to say Pieter is also my Deloitte colleague as an actuarial manager in Deloitte, South Africa. He's here today to share how he's checked his edge and demonstrated resilience, purpose, and impact through sport. I'm Kim Christfort, Chief Innovation Leader for Executive Accelerators and the Deloitte Greenhouse. You're listening to Breakthrough by Design, where we chat with a diverse array of guests, from scientists to CEOs, academics to athletes, exploring what it takes to get to breakthrough. So, Pieter, you are such a busy person between your sports life and your Deloitte life. I'm curious, is there time for anything outside of sport? And if so, what is it you do to find inspiration or relaxation?
I think it's important to just do some different things in life. Obviously, my family keeps me very busy, but in the end, sport is a lifestyle. And I think my whole family sort of have adopted that with me at this point in time. We do have 2 border collies, and we obviously like to go on some walks and things with the dogs. In the end, at this stage of our life, sport sort of takes most of the time. So we try and combine doing sporting events or training with some social and time together. You need to be clever about how you spend your time and what you do with your time and prioritize.
Excellent. And when you're training, do you have a routine that you do? Is there music, for instance, that you listen to? What gets you pumped up or in the zone?
As an elite athlete, when you race in sports, you can't really have music and phones and those things with you while you race. But when I do train indoors, I do have a huge array of playlists and things as to keep me busy and make those long sessions feel a little bit shorter. But to be really honest, I often use training as things to, depending on what training session it is, to charge my batteries. But at the same time, also time to think about, important things or where I'm going with life. Even just from a religion point of view, I'm a Christian, and in a certain way, it's sort of kind of meditation and talking to God as well. Then in terms of getting me in the zone, I just know when I do that session or when I race, when it's an important one, it's almost like it naturally happens that I get in the zone. But there's always a bit of like prayer beforehand and kind of sort of rituals, if I can put it that way, when it's important sessions or races that I'm training or racing.
That's fascinating. So you've conditioned your body essentially to know when you're in a serious moment to get in that zone state. And really, it sounds like almost rise beyond your body and get in this meditative, more contemplative, almost spiritual zone. So, Peter, let's start at the beginning of your athletic journey. I know that sports have always been a major part of your story, but what has sports really meant in your life? If you think back to your early childhood years, how did you think about sport?
Firstly, since I was 6 years old, I was already praying and dreaming of going to the Olympics and winning a gold medal. At that point, I was actually doing sprints at primary school, and it evolved eventually into distance running in primary school already, and up till eventually triathlon later on in my life. So obviously from that age, I was already, this is my dream. But to the question, I went to school at the age of 5. So I was a bit younger, basically a year early than the normal age for grade 1 primary school. And I think in a certain sense, I was ready in terms of being able to stick with what we're learning and those kind of things. But I think emotionally, I was very shy. And obviously, maybe that's a trait of my personality anyway. But I do think going to school early made me sort of shy and a little bit insecure from that perspective. I think sports is the one thing that helped me bloom and sort of come out of that shell, if I can put it that way. So already from that age, I think they played an important role without me knowing it. But I mean, then of course, you have the simple things of all the things you learn from sport, like discipline and commitment and resilience and not giving up and all those kind of things. I think, which is the answer. Everybody will say it and it's so cliche, but it actually is that big of an influence that it does make in your life. Those are the things that I think sport already taught me. At the same time, there's a parallel you can draw to it, to just everything you do in life. They combine with culture and with your schoolwork and with your work when you grow up and everything, So I think it's just amazing how it can help you live a purposeful life and make an impact. Obviously, at that age, I wasn't sure where it was going to take me, but I had my dreams, and that was where I was aiming.
So from the very start, you had these ambitions for the highest level of sport, really, competing in the Olympics. And then at the age of 23, you experienced an accident that changed your trajectory. Can you share the story of what happened and what those early days and weeks were like for you?
Firstly, my parents were, during those times when I grew up, conservative in a certain sense that you do your sport at school and so on, but then when you get out of school, you go study and then you go work. So they were supportive of the sport, but it was always like a thing of it's at school and then at varsity you can still do your sport, but then you have to go work. In a certain sense, I don't think they always saw where I saw myself going with this whole sporting dream. I studied my degree in actuarial science and I was busy with my honours degree in investment management. During those years, I'd already made South African under-23 team in triathlon racing at World Champs in Canada in 2001. At the age of 23, I was actually on my way. I had to do 60 kilometers of cycling on the day. I thought I'll kill two birds with one stone because I had a bit of a hamstring niggle. I needed to go see a chiropractor. I decided I'll cycle to the chiropractor and back, and that'll be my 60 k's of cycling then as well. Anyway, then on the way to the chiropractor to get my spine in alignment, a car didn't see me and knocked me off my bicycle and knocked my spine completely out of alignment. So basically, I broke my femur, crushed my kneecap, broke both my wrists, and then the most severe of all of that was breaking my neck as well. It was an elderly lady who knocked me off my bike. She just didn't see me. She actually thought a rock hit her car. And when she got out of the car, she saw my bike lying on the floor, and then she came running hysterically and crying towards me. It was just amazing for me how I actually calmed her down. At that point, face down on the tar, not being able to move a thing. And I told her that I forgive her, but that she must just calm down so we could deal with the situation. And I think in a big way, it's very important. I always say forgiveness sets you free. And somehow maybe that's just a gift I got from God. I just forgave her there and then, and that was it. From there, it was focus on the situation and move forward. But yeah, I spent 42 days in ICU. I eventually ended up on a ventilator for 32 days. I couldn't breathe anymore when I got to the hospital. And I was put in an induced coma for a week initially because I couldn't operate on my neck because there was too much swelling. And there was a piece of bone lying on the spinal cord, so it was too dangerous to operate immediately. So I was put in an induced coma and had screws in my head with weights pulling my neck into traction and those kind of things. 42 days later, I was ready to go to rehab and diagnosed, obviously, at that point as a C5-6 quadriplegic.
Incredible story. I'm struck by this instantaneous forgiveness that you describe, and I'd love to understand more. You say that's always perhaps been a blessing of who you are. How are you thinking as you're processing these things in your life? It feels like you also have this common theme of being focused on what's next, on the goal. Do you feel like that forgiveness is the necessary first step to get to the goal, or how do you process that in your head?
Well, I think in that situation, obviously, it just happened. We talk a lot about in the zone or flow state of mind, but so I think that's my default. That's who I am. And it's a funny thing because sometimes still the smaller things, it's very hard for me to forgive or I get really cross. In South Africa, we've got some interesting taxi drivers and they follow their own rules often. If they drive in front of me, it's very difficult to forgive them for doing certain things. But the moment it's a big thing that makes a big impact, somehow I go in the zone of forgiveness, in the zone of moving forward, because it's not really going to help to go on a ranting phase. And I think it's just something that has become second nature for me. I think before my accident already, I also had a mindset because of many things that happened. I was saying when a bad thing happens, it's an opportunity to be great, but it starts within yourself. And I think it's just all those things for me is the moment these things happen, I'm almost more calm, more in control. And I go in a zone where, okay, what do I do now to use this and go forward in the most efficient way?
It's an incredible mindset. You have this inverse relationship between the level of irritation and challenge and your ability to rise to the task. The attitude that you're describing is such an interesting one as we think about breakthrough, because a lot of what we see is that people often don't push themselves to their limits because they either think they can't or they're comfortable with the status quo. It seems like you see these challenges as a call to action, that there's sort of a personal call for you to do something more, to do something better.
Yeah, the moment I see a challenge and it's something that I want to do, or it's a challenge or a barrier in front of me, but it's in the way of where I want to go, then I try and turn it into just part of an opportunity or something fun. My favorite saying, you're just one mind shift away from the solution to any problem, was culminated coming from before my accident. There was a lot of things that happened before my accident, especially in the last 6 months before my accident and the lead up. That was almost preparing me for some defining moment in my life. That was preparing me to be ready for all these mind shifts and attitudes and always being positive. Not just the 6 months, obviously the way I grew up and the tools I was given by my family and my friends and my parents and everybody. In the end, I honestly believe you're just that one mind shift away from the solution to any problem. And if those challenges come up and those barriers of impossibility or just barriers that makes life hard, I see them as something that I want to go smash through, because I still want to get to my end goal. But you need to take it step by step, break it up into smaller steps on the way.
When you were first coming out of this accident, it sounds like you couldn't even breathe on your own, let alone be in a position where you could potentially get back into the world of athletics. What were you hearing from doctors and the people around you about your prospects?
I think maybe it's important to also just give the context to the listeners. So I'm now a C6 quadriplegic, and maybe just what does that mean? So first of all, the fact that I was on a ventilator and couldn't breathe meant that there was swelling or injury to my spinal cord, C3 level and above. They believe the swelling went all the way up to my brainstem, because I actually lost my control of my eyes for 2 weeks as well. I basically only have movement of my wrists, my biceps, and my shoulders. And then the rest of my body, I'm completely paralyzed. So I've got no hand or finger movement at all. I also have very low blood pressure. I can't sweat at all. I can go out in 40-degree heat in the sun and train as hard as I can, and there won't be a drop of sweat on my body. So temperature regulation is a big problem. And I also can't get my heart rate up. And those are just among many things. You can't feel over your whole body. You have to be careful of pressure sores, sit on special cushions, turn at nighttime when you sleep so that you don't get bed sores, those kind of things. So there's a lot of extra challenges over and above just now you're in a wheelchair. And especially being a quadriplegic with so little function to continue in life, if I can put it that way. So yes, of course, the doctors, in most cases, they at that point in time, and many of them even today, would just tell you they don't know any C6 quadriplegics that can be independent. You'll always need tools or things to just be able to do things in life. You're always going to have people around you to do things. You won't do things like drive a car or get in the car yourself, be able to transfer on and off a bed. Just a lot of do and give. Another thing was my dad, when he was at school, they were playing rugby, and in a rugby practice, one of their teammates in the practice broke his neck, and he ended up pretty much the same level of quadriplegia as what I am. And obviously that's now many years before me, but that also, obviously in his mind, he knew what that guy could do. And that's what he saw. And I think that in the back of his mind was what this was going to be for me. So all the discussions we had, and like the first time I went home, I just remember the first drive from rehab back home. He told me, I don't have to worry. We'll set up a workstation at home and I can play with investments or something, but I don't have to worry. We'll make a plan. I had a lot of respect for my dad, but I remember thinking in my head, I won't swear now, but it was a swear word. Like in my head, I was just saying, what the hell is he thinking? I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be independent. And I'm going to do my thing still. My accident happened. Everybody was focused on everything I suddenly didn't have, and that all my dreams were shattered. Everybody's now looking at me, and this creates an opportunity for me to be great. Turn this bad thing into something great. For me, those mind shifts is what's important. Because if you keep looking at the closed doors, worrying about the closed doors, it's not going to take you anywhere. Focus on the open doors, and sometimes the new doors that has now opened in these challenges. Then it's going to take you somewhere. You still don't know where, but at least you're going to be moving somewhere instead of standing still looking at closed doors or bumping into a closed door, which is not going to take you anywhere.
It's an incredible story of defining your own reality, and as you say, focusing on what you could have and what you wanna have next versus what you don't have and what you've lost. That mindset shift isn't necessarily natural for most people. Are there things you think help in terms of shifting mindset? Are there techniques you use or ways that you help get yourself to think in that forward and positive and optimistic sense?
It's a very difficult thing to answer because I think it develops over time. And I think maybe in my case, it was just something that naturally also evolved through just things that happen in life. But also, of course, I think the people you surround you with and the situations you surround you with every day as you grow up, there's no magic, I think, pill or solution. But what I can say, so two things. So I do think my faith played a big role in my mindset, but also a couple of things in my life happened. But one big thing that I think often gets many people down, and again, I think already at that stage, it was evidence of my mindset being in a different way, is my older brother and myself were diagnosed with an eye condition called choroideremia, which will eventually leave us completely blind. That happened when I was 17. I'm now 44. So sitting here today, I don't have central vision on my left eye. I don't have 20/20 vision anymore. I've got peripheral vision. I'm going colorblind. And it's starting to really make a big impact in my life. Never mind the sports that I currently do and all the risks I'm starting to take in doing so. It didn't bother me. And I always explain it as I saw that in the end. I decided to see it as a superpower. And to explain that is, from the day I was diagnosed with that, I knew that eventually I'm going to be completely blind. And it's a gradual process. And that for me was every morning when I woke up, constant reminder when I open my eyes, I can still see today. I better do as much as I can with my eyesight while I have it and do the things that I need eyesight for while I have it. So for me, it was a superpower because it was a constant reminder and motivator of living every day with what you have to the best of your ability and being positive and not letting the negative things, and don't sweep the small stuff. It can only take you in the wrong direction. For me, it's not that there's a gray area. I honestly believe you always have a choice. So when a bad thing happens or a tough day, you can choose whether you're going to get depressed about it or carry on ranting about it and just talk about the negative side of it. Or you can choose to learn from it and choose the positive side and see how you can turn it into an opportunity to be great. And for me, the thing is, maybe that was a gift that I definitely got, that it's just easier for me to do that. But I also firmly believe that you can condition yourself and rewire your neural pathways in your brain to focus on the positive stuff and make that mind shift on how you're going to use it and turn it around into something better. It's in such a way that it's going to become second nature to rather do that than the default second nature for a lot of people to choose the negative. And I think the more you choose that positive, how you're going to turn it into a good situation or use it to propel you forward, the more that becomes second nature. You just have to keep practicing that. But of course, you have to be aware that you are being negative. Be aware of the situation. You talk about status quo, and be aware of what of your status quo is pulling you down, and then reverse it to choose the positive. A lot of times people would also ask me, but, there's always these voices, and sometimes choosing the positive side feels hard and it's a tougher choice. I just always say, but always go back to from when you were little. There were moments where you overcame something or tough times, but look at where you are today. And bank those tough times that you overcome and have overcome. And every time there's a voice that tells you, no, you can't do this, go cash in on those memories and remind yourself of all the things that you have overcome. Then hopefully that helps you and motivates you and gives you that self-belief that you can overcome this situation as well, and helps you believe that you can push the unknown and check the edge and move forward from there.
These are amazing tips for how to reframe the world around you and really, as you say, rewire your brain to focus on the positive and to know that you have a choice to reframe it in that way. I'm curious because a lot of checking your edge is actually knowing where your edge is. How far can you really go? How far can you take it? Until you push yourself, you don't know what you're capable of. In your journey, were you ever surprised yourself at what you've been able to accomplish, or did you always have this confidence you could get there? How much were you able to push beyond even what you thought was possible?
I read the chapter on checking the edge, and there's really a lot of parallel that you can pull. For me, what's a very important thing is you speak a lot about your status quo, but not trying to jump off the edge. So you're making this big jump and then you're going to die. You talk about just challenging yourself. You're using the skills you're already a pro at, but then you're taking that to the next level and challenging yourself to something that you sort of almost believe you can do. So for me, it's a key thing to make those smaller goals on the way to the bigger goals, smaller steps on the way to the bigger ones, and smaller dreams on the way to the bigger dreams. Because as you hit those small targets, you believe more and more. And if you start hitting so many of those small targets, your belief, the steps that you start to take becomes bigger because you believe bigger. And then when you have two big steps, suddenly the next step you take is the double of those two big ones. And so on and so forth exponentially until you just believe the impossible is possible. Now, if you bear with me, I'll tell you a story which I often tell when I do talks. And that is my getting dressed story. Because now my accident happened and I'm being told all this doom and gloom and I'll never be able to do all these things. And I just want to get out of rehab because these people are not letting me do my natural thing. Being an actuarial analyst, it's all about finding solutions to problems. So obviously it was just right down my alley. It was fun for me to figure out how to do these things that everybody's telling me can't be done and that has never been done before. Because I saw it as these challenges, but I broke it up into small things. So getting dressed, I broke up to, okay, let me just first try and put a sock on, one sock. I wanted to do all these things without any tools, just the hands that I have that where I can't move a single finger. So how do you hold on to a sock and get dressed? So now I have to figure out ways of doing all these things. But anyway, break it down to one sock, then both socks one day, then your underpants, your pants, your clothes, etc. But the key thing is, then I said, okay, coming from a sporting background, and this is where the sport parallel comes in. When I started doing triathlons and duathlons, then I was a runner. Then my running was super strong. I get on the bike and the guys kill me and I'm dead after the race. They average over 40, I'm averaging 31 k's an hour. And I'm in the first couple of races thinking, how will I ever be as fast as those guys? It's impossible. But you just keep trying. A year later, suddenly there I am, winning the races, averaging over 40 k's an hour on the bike as well. Because I just kept going, small steps, faster, and then we get there. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to time myself getting fully dressed and see how long that takes me. And the first time I fully dressed myself, it took me 51 minutes. And I was dead tired. And that was right in the beginning after I just got back home after rehab. Then I'm 10 kilograms less. I weighed like 55 versus the 68 that I was before my accident. So you're weak and everything. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to dress for almost an hour every day. I'm going to make my target that I want to get to 15 minutes. But now this is now that huge jump. Okay. So I'm not expecting to jump to the 15 minutes in one day. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to time every day, get to 15 minutes. And once I get to 15, I stop. And then the person that was with me finishes up dressing me. With the whole idea that every day I do this, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but eventually, hopefully, I can be fully dressed in 15 minutes. And I mean, that person that was with me in the beginning, a caregiver, lovely lady, in the beginning I could see she didn't want to do it in front of me, but I could see she was laughing. This guy timing himself, getting dressed, he's useless, he's never going to get there. 2 weeks later, she started cheering me on, like a rugby match. Because she started seeing, geez, this guy is getting closer every day. And I think it took me a month of doing that every day, and I hit 15 minutes and I was fully dressed. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to leave it there. I'm going to make my world record impossible target 7 minutes. Because as I used the measurement of time as something that showed me I'm getting faster and better, living this life as a quad, it motivated. The world record for a C6 squat to dress, that doesn't exist, but I just made it this impossible target just so that I could keep moving forward towards the end goal because it made me move forward. I just kept going. I started timing everything, getting in and out of the car, in and out of the bath, toilet, after I figured out doing those things. Then under 12, then under 11, I think it was 2 months later, I opened my eyes and I broke 7 minutes. And today, I don't time myself getting dressed anymore every day, but I do go for a record every now and then, and my record currently is 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Now, that is 2.5 times faster than what I thought was impossible. Now, the thing for me here is through a simple thing as getting dressed, I just opened my mind again to believe in the possible being possible. The parallel of checking your edge here is often we see these obstacles or the challenges or these barriers of impossibility, and we turn around and walk away because it just looks unsurmountable. And I promise you, then you're never going to get there because you just walk away. But if you keep trying and try different angles, often you find ways around them, often you find ways to smash through them. And even if you don't ever see it in the rearview mirror, but still in front of you, you're going to be a hell of a lot closer than if you never went down that road of trying and trying. And for me, a simple thing of dressing and timing myself opened my eyes of believing in that impossible being possible again. From there, a lot of things happen. I can tell you now, if it wasn't for that, I would still be sitting at home not doing much, if I can put it that way, because that honestly opened my eyes. And that whole mindset of having an open mind and keeping on trying new things and listening to advice of others. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but don't be scared to try things. That mindset takes you everywhere.
It's such a great story of breakthrough because when we talk about breakthrough, we choose that word because we want to break through a barrier. There is something holding you back, but you also need that momentum to actually get to something better on the other side. And sometimes we see people mistakenly think that that is an instantaneous magic thing that you sort of get from the before to the after. And it's this aspiration that you just so show up and you're there. And what you're describing is that getting through that barrier is a process. It's an incremental process. You have to push yourself constantly. I guess it's no surprise that you're a world-class competitor because for you, you're competing with every single thing from the very start. You're competing against yourself to hit that ambition. It's an incredible, inspiring story.
For me, if you make these small steps in training or if you compare it to a business thing, if you prepare yourself properly before you take on this project or whatever, then by the time that impossible barrier comes, then you've sort of gotten yourself educated and ready to take it on. Me, my Ironman is really also, it's a very long story, but that was also a process of people telling me, you can't do an Ironman, it's impossible. First of all, you can't swim, you can't do any of these sports. And then me believing that I can do an Ironman, but then the process, like you say, step by step doing it. But on top of that, I always talk about if you set a date, it becomes a goal. Otherwise, it stays a dream. Now, that's why for me, it's important to have the dream because that's the end goal that you're chasing. But I believe then you need to set these smaller goals on the way there. And you can't just set the goal, in my mind, without setting a date. And it doesn't have to be something like sport where you can time yourself. So on that date, I'm going to do that race or that 5K time trial and see if I'm that fast already. It can be with anything in life that you're doing where you say, I want to be better with anger management. I want to spend more time with my family. And then you set a date in a month's time or 2 months' time. You share your goals and dreams with your team or your family, whoever is close to you. And then on that date, you check in and see, have you gotten better with this? Because in that way, if you set that date, it becomes a goal, it becomes more touchable and real. And then you can check in and you have people that hold you accountable to that. You reach these small steps. Then you start getting this confidence to jump bigger steps. And the next thing you know, you're jumping all the way to that impossible barrier or dream that you thought you're never going to get to. But yeah, you definitely can't think from here to the end goal without building these building blocks towards the end.
So, Peter, I'd love to brag about you just for a moment because you went from this self-competition around how quickly you could put on your socks to incredible athletic achievements. National champion in hand cycling and wheelchair racing, 7-time Berlin Marathon champion, course record holder and world record holder in multiple events, and ultimately a 2-time Paralympian, first in London in 2012, where you finished 6th, and the 100-meter T51 event, and then Tokyo 2020, where you won the road time trial H1 gold medal. Just incredible accomplishments. And now, of course, we're looking ahead to Paris 2024, which is right around the corner. What has this Olympics journey meant to you? I know that you have this deep connection with sports as this motivator in your life and this commitment to always achieving and being better. But what about the Olympics journey in particular is so special to you?
The Olympics, it's just a big event and everybody knows about it. Paralympics, everybody knows about it. Obviously, that's also a platform to also make a big impact. So if sport is your purpose in life, and that's where you make impacts in life, then competing at the highest level, and there's none higher than Olympics and Paralympics, is obviously your end goal where you really want to get to. So just there, it's special. Of course, the core values of the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, for me, how that aligns now with Deloitte's ethos and core values is also very special, obviously. With all of that, and it being a childhood dream, and that childhood dream from an Olympic gold obviously changed then to a Paralympic gold. And I can't say that a Paralympic gold will ever be exactly the same as an Olympic gold. You can never say that the depth in competition will just never be the same, but it's still the highest that you can achieve as a para-athlete. London was actually the first games where there was any event for my disability class again, because since 2004, 2008, there was no sort of individual sport events for my sport class. Then in 2012, there was actually only the sprints, and I'm an endurance athlete. So for me, that was a stepping stone, my first games, and obviously very special to just have made the team and participated in the actual games. The gold medal was still that end result that I really wanted. But for me, the important thing of this whole journey and talking about the Olympic Games, and I mean, you're bragging of my achievements. Thank you very much for that. It's humbling. But for me, the important thing behind it all is if you're not enough without it, you're never going to be enough with it. And people often ask me, so, but what do you mean by that? And how do you know you're enough? And I think the important thing for me is you need to make that journey to your dream or your goal purposeful and impactful. I mean, that's for me also what I love about Deloitte, is the whole focus on the impact that matters and purpose beyond profit, especially here in our Africa firm. And I just love that, because for me, that's what life is about. You need to make sure that that journey that you're on, that passion that drives you forward, where you're making your biggest impact, whether it's in your work career, sport career, social life, family life, whatever it is, where you really have that passion, or maybe a combination of all of them, that it's purposeful. And if you make sure that wherever you are in touch with people and can make a difference and can make an impact with that passion, and if you make sure it's purposeful, then whether you get that gold medal or reach that dream will be the cherry on top. But you're going to be enough with or without. I think that for me is the important thing. And I think that's where, for me, the whole Olympics journey, it gave me that gold medal to chase. And it's something very difficult to reach. So again, it's a process. And it's a process where I might never get there. But that means it's going to be a continuous process, probably for my whole life or for a very long time. It keeps me chasing it. But the great thing is then, as long as I make it a purposeful chase, then it's worth it. And that's what makes it so special for me.
I know that you're very focused on making a purposeful impact to the people around you and to giving back. Can you talk about some of the ways that you're doing this? How are you giving back to, for instance, newly injured people or kids through sport?
One of the coolest things of when I became the first quad to do an Ironman, and again, the scary thing about that Ironman is that I broke my forearm badly in 3 pieces 6 weeks before that race. And again, I was told it's impossible to do it, and the doctors were laughing at me when I told them I'm still going to do this. But that's a long story, but that made it almost more impossible. And 6 weeks later, I went and I did it, and up till today, I finished 4 Ironmans, and that's still my fastest one. But when I came back from that, and that was before I really became a world champion and more well-known and did really well in my sports, I came back and there was a guy that I many years before played wheelchair rugby with, who was exactly the same level injury as I was. But he was living in his parents' house, never thought he would marry or anything, not independent, not dressing himself, but very motivated guy, happy guy. But then because I did an Ironman, he decided if Peter can do an Ironman, which he thinks still today is impossible, then he can dress himself. And he went back to outpatient rehab. He contacted me after like 5 years of not seeing him because I stopped playing wheelchair rugby, and asked me if I can give him some tips and help him. And today, he's dressing himself. He moved out of his parents' house, has a girlfriend, and his quality of life improved because I did Ironman. And that for me is the coolest thing and the things I'm the proudest of. Not gold medals at a games or finishing the Ironman. The fact that some simple thing that I did in my life made another guy live a better quality life. So in that way, obviously, it's naturally giving back. But then I do go to rehabs and show people and go obviously speak with people in similar situations and show them what I do and what's possible. And in that way, hopefully, through telling my story or just living my life and helping where I can, it helps make a difference. But then on the sports side, obviously at the same time, I try and get as many people as possible into sports. Well, for that matter, for me, a hobby then, just get them out of the house. So whether it is a sport or not, doesn't matter. But in my case, obviously my passion is sports. So getting guys into cycling and doing sports and being active, because it's extra important for people in wheelchairs. Where I can, then I help get the guys and promote the sport and get them into the sports. And obviously where I can financially assist the guy to get a bike or maybe give an old bike to somebody who can't afford it. And that way I try and do my thing. But ultimately, it doesn't make me special. I think these are just things that we should all be doing anyway, because it's purposeful and it helps the world move forward in the right direction.
Well, I personally am inspired by your mindset and attitude and your ability to shift from looking at things as a whether or not to a how. How am I going to do this? It's not whether or not I can do this. And I do think that there's so many ways that we can all apply that, whether it's in sports or in our broader lives. I am interested in the spirit of how do you do something? I was pretty blown away when I learned that you were not only a Paralympian and actively competing with Team Deloitte, but you also are working at Deloitte. How do you balance two very demanding roles?
I think balance is a very, very important word and often underestimated. And maybe there's many different words for the same thing. But I always say one man's balance is another man's fall. So balance is also something that constantly needs to change. And you need to adapt that balance because you go through different phases in life. And the same thing in projects, in your sporting career, in everything. And you need to constantly, almost want to say, check your edge, check your balance. Because it's that fine balance of moving out of your comfort zone, but not too much, because then you're going to start losing your confidence. But also at the same time, not spending enough time in the comfort zone as well. So I think balance is a very key word here. And at the same time, choosing where you want to go out of your comfort zone, because in certain senses, sometimes routine and doing the same thing is very important. As a simple example, I need to have a great sleep routine so that I stay healthy, so that I can push the limits and jump over the edge in sports, but amongst many other things. But it's the balance, and it can change depending on what phase in your life you are. It's incredibly humbling, and I'm very privileged. The team that I work with at Deloitte, how it's evolved. I've paid my school fees there when I started working there. Then I started doing my sports again, and how they've allowed me to do what I do and go bloom in sport while still being able to work and pay the bills and feed my kid and do my due on the family side. So I think in a big way, again, it's a team effort, but it's very important between that team effort that you communicate and that you're disciplined and that you prioritize what's important to keep moving and to keep you moving forward in the most efficient way that propels you towards that purpose and that end goal where you are going to make the biggest impact. So it's a combination of those things. The biggest part and most important part of my team is, my nickname is Super Pete from before my accident. So I always talk about Team Super Pete. And I'm in Deloitte, and the team I directly work with forms a big part of that. But obviously my family, I'm now a father of a 7-year-old, my wife and my son and myself. And the sacrifices we all make being on the same journey to end up reaching those big goals, making sure that we're not too selfish so that everybody can still sort of move forward to their own purpose and goals in this journey together. Because it can't all be about the one person if the other person's not also on board towards that same dream or goal and also making his impacts while being on that goal. It's teamwork, and just amazing that the team that I work with in Deloitte has allowed me to do what I do in such a way.
It's a great example of the other manifesto principle, actually, enlist a motley crew. To do what you do so well, you need a group of people around you supporting you. And that's your teammates at Deloitte, in your workplace, that's your family, that's all these people holding you accountable for these goals that you're setting for yourself. And that ability to bring in their perspectives and support is a huge part of getting to breakthrough.
It's not just your work team. You need your family team and everybody. That's why I talk about that balance. Now, there is obviously certain phases where you're going to have to push those hours or those limits. And then the family's got to be supportive, but then there's got to be times where you need to pull back. And I think that's where in the business environment, it's very important to make sure every person on the team, if they have a family life, that balance is very important. You talk about being in tune and checking your status quo while checking your edge. I think it's important to always check all those things and make sure that balance is still pushing you towards, if I can use a business word, the efficient frontier, like with investments. Where is that sweet spot that sits in the efficient frontier that's going to propel you forward to reach and be most efficient and effective in wherever that purpose or impact and goal is?
I love that. And my business way of thinking about that is we're trying to optimize, not maximize. You need to look at all these variables and come to an optimal outcome across them.
And it needs to be a long-term view, because often it's optimal, say even a maximized view right now, but it's not sustainable. And then 10 years down the line, you're done. So it needs to be what is the most optimal to get you to the maximum over a longer period, a sustainable period.
I love that.
That's business talk.
Exactly. We do that every once in a while. So, Pieter, there's a question we ask everyone on the show, which is, in your opinion, what does breakthrough mean?
I think at the crux of it, I think an open mindset. You want to shift that mindset to try new things and always be open to change and try things differently. And it doesn't necessarily always mean that all of those things you try are going to work and going to work for you necessarily. But if you don't try, you never know. And I think the important thing for me is people often talk about he needs to get to a breakthrough, and that'll give him the confidence or something to take him forward. But I often think people don't realize that sometimes a small step is a breakthrough in itself. Again, my getting dressed story or small things in life, those small steps, you need to, I always want to say, celebrate them on the way to the bigger ones. For me, like I said, finally when I could dress myself and I broke that world record, my world record, the 7 minute, but now I'm down to 2:41. That 7 minutes was a big breakthrough. But before that, just being fully dressed in 15 minutes was a breakthrough. And before that, just seeing every day that I'm one part of clothing extra on my body, that was a breakthrough. So it's the small things, I think, often that people forget to celebrate. Some of these leaders always ask me, how do I motivate people? What would I tell them? And I often tell them, I say, you don't need to be a superhero to inspire. You can be a normal person with a smile. I think it's very important to remember that those small little steps are small breakthroughs on the way to the big ones. And in order to get there, you need to have that open mindset and try new things. And those new things that you try, win or lose, it's teaching you something on how you need to approach the next one. So that's already a breakthrough.
Incredible advice, Pieter. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm incredibly grateful for the stories that you've shared. I'm inspired by your resilience and resolve and your practicality. I think that so much of what you have shared with us today is something that everyone can take and apply in their lives. I will tell you, I am going to be for sure watching and cheering you on over the coming weeks and months leading up to the games. Excited to see where you're going to go next.
No, thank you very much. No, I mean, in the end, I'm just going to, go full tilt and believe that you race to win. But what happens on the day happens on the day. But it's just a privilege to be on the journey, and it's a privilege to have Deloitte on the journey and people like you supporting me, because it motivates me more than I think you guys, than I motivate you guys often. So thank you very much.
Well, it's been an honor. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time in what is an incredibly busy period, and we wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you guys as well.
I'm in awe of Pieter and how he continues to push past constraints and overcome obstacles by checking his edge. Even though an accident altered his path, it didn't prevent him from achieving his childhood dream, becoming a gold medalist. His passion for sport, strong will, and network of family and friends helped him to transform the impossible into new definitions of possible, breaking records and opening doors for others to make a positive impact. We'll be rooting for Pieter and the other incredible Team Deloitte athletes as they get ready for the Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris this summer. If you want to learn more about Pieter and other leaders who are sparking transformative innovation in their fields, visit breakthroughmanifesto.com. Thank you for listening to Breakthrough by Design, where we believe everyone has the potential for breakthrough.
This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, go to deloitte.com/about.